So just wanted to welcome you all to this lunchtime's presentation. I'm Heidi and I'm from Active Oxfordshire, and as you can possibly see in the other box next to me, we've got Nigel here as well. So this session has been designed following on from the Child Protection in Sport Unit's Own Awareness Week a couple of weeks ago, which was around keeping your child safe in sport. And off the back of that, we wanted to create an awareness piece and some practical information that we could share some guidance for people as parents or carers or guardians to also help keep their child safe as well. It might be that you've already got some involvement in sport and some knowledge around this subject. So hopefully this information will just help to reaffirm what you potentially already know, or it could be completely new to you. But either way, hopefully you'll take something away from today's session. So as I mentioned, I'm joined by Nigel. He's here as the Head of Football Support Services for the County FA, and he's also the designated Safeguarding Officer for Oxfordshire FA as well. And he'll be sharing some best practice along the way as the Football Association, as a national governing body for football, around what they do in installing it in their clubs across Oxfordshire. So as I mentioned, this session is going to be ran today over 2 sessions, and both sessions will be recorded and we can share the recordings at the end of the session. We'll keep mics muted if that's okay with everybody, but you should have access to the chat function. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, then please feel free to pop that in the chat. We think the presentation should last around 45 minutes. And if you're watching this as a recording, then all my contact details will be at the end. Okay, so just to cover off what the topics we're going to look at today. So we're going to just dig a bit deeper into what a good sporting environment looks like, and the opposite to that, a poor practice as well. We're going to provide you with some questions that you could use to ask your club or activity provider. We're going to talk around what touchline behaviour means and what it means to be an active bystander. How, if you wanted to raise a concern, how you can best do this, ways in which you can support your club as well as a participant or parent, and then we'll just share some resources for you at the end. So just to introduce myself, and I'm not met many of you, I don't think. So I'm Heidi and I'm the Safeguarding and Welfare Manager here at Active Oxfordshire. I'm also a parent of 2 very active young boys, and therefore working for Active Oxfordshire, whose main purpose and drive is to ensure everybody in Oxfordshire has the opportunity to be active. I can really relate to how the power of physical activity helps us with our physical and our mental health, and also recognise how it helps to build resilience, confidence, friendship. It really gives us that sense of community and belonging. And these are just some really important attributes that are important when it comes to our child's development. I've also got quite a lot of years of experience. I think I put 20 on that slide. It might be slightly more. And that's working in the sports and fitness industry with children and adults, helping to improve their physical activity. I'm also a club welfare officer myself and a coach. So hopefully with all this information, it should give me the skills and knowledge to be able to present this information for you today. So as I mentioned, I work for Active Oxfordshire. Active Oxfordshire are an active partnership, and there are 43 of those across the county. So if you're not in Oxfordshire, you will have an active partnership where you are based. And within that network, we're also a sport welfare officer. So we have this role which has been designed to support clubs and their welfare officers to help improve the culture of safeguarding within the club environment. We want to try and ensure that sport and physical activity are always positive experiences for everybody. And the sport welfare officer role is also linked with the national governing bodies of the sports, and we're trying to work collaboratively with them to improve this across all sports. We have a core set of guidelines that help to provide the direction that most of us want to stick to, and the ones that are relevant for this session predominantly are around raise awareness and enable. So we want to try and speak around welfare issues. We want to gather and respond to local insight and promote safeguarding within clubs. And that can be by doing sessions like today, where we're highlighting the issues around the importance of safeguarding for our children, But we also want to enable volunteers, parents, participants to be able to create safe and inclusive sporting environments as well. And this can be done through shared learning and training and resources, as safeguarding is everybody's responsibility. So I'd like to just start off by getting your brains into gear and posing you a question. If you were to think of your most valuable material possession, how would you feel if I was to ask you to take that item and go and give it to a stranger to look after? So what would stop you from doing this in the first instance? What questions would you want to know? And would you even feel comfortable about doing this? So handing over the keys of your house or your car or your prize winning pet. I put a turtle on there because my son's obsessed with turtles and losing his favourite turtle would just be the end of the world. So if just pop in the chat box, what would stop you from doing that? What kind of questions would you want to know? Just give you a minute or two just to have a think about that. Nigel, are you able to check on the chat for me?
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on that, and I'm answering the question myself.
Brilliant. Okay, so in answer to the question, I'm a parent, as I mentioned, of two young boys, both who enjoy sport, and I'm also keen to encourage this. So my husband and I both work full time, and we are quite guilty of having that situation where we book our child into an after school club or a holiday club and we drop them off, but because we have to be somewhere else, whether it's meeting or work or another activity, we don't always spend the time getting to know the person who's looking after our children. Obviously my children are both extremely important to me, so it's getting to know them about their backgrounds. So Lauren, that did just pop up, so thank you for that. So we really should be making sure that we are taking the time to get to know the people that are looking after our children. Unlike education settings, sport is lacking in regulation, which can lead to some major inconsistencies in what qualifications and credentials sports leaders need to undertake or run their sessions. So having that assumption that just because someone's promoted their coaching session or club on social media or it's come through the school, that they're going to do the right thing is not always enough, really. I think we need to be really aware of what good and poor practice looks like. So this leads us on to, again, another activity. So trying to think around where we've been to an environment, may be a new club, whether it's as an adult or as a child. If we're going there for the first time, what sort of things would we look for that might strike to us as not being a very welcoming environment? What would be a red flag? So again, using the chat function, if you wouldn't mind, just write down what things might stick out to you, what sort of things we should be looking out for. And Nigel, once again, if you wouldn't mind just keeping an eye on the chat, we'll just have a couple of minutes. Okay, what have we got so far?
So shouting coaches has come in from Lauren. Unclear who is in charge from Sarah. And then Helena, I think it is. Lack of boundaries and inappropriate language. Disorganized, again from Lauren. So yeah, those are the ones that have come in so far.
That's great, thanks. So I've just got some examples on the screen here, so I'll just bring them all up and we can talk around them. So I think most of you pretty much highlighted what we were looking at as well. So just the first one. So there's not many sports or places where you'll be discouraged by coaches from watching that sport. And if you are being asked to leave or discouraged, as I say, from not sticking around, then if there's not a genuine reason why they're asking you to do this, and I would challenge this. Obviously, for those holiday camps and that sort of thing where you've booked your child in because you're unable to look after them, then that's fine. But it's in a general club or sports setting. The use of lack of challenge towards bullying or discriminatory behaviour. So if you're hearing homophobic or racist or bullying language and these aren't being challenged by staff members and they're not being called out, then I would be concerned as to why that's not being spoken to or being stopped. Win at all costs attitude. So if that's showing favouritism or rewarding specific children rather than the whole group, then and demonstrating that particular attitudes and saying that succeeding rather than enjoying the sport and setting unrealistic expectations, that would be a red flag to me as well. Not providing safe equipment and spaces. So clubs are not only responsible for the welfare, but they're also responsible for providing safe equipment and spaces for your children. So this would be something to look out for. And poor communication around the topic of safeguarding. So does your club talk actively and promote welfare and safeguarding? Or if you wanted to speak to someone, I think someone put in the chat there about knowing who to speak to, has it been communicated to you who the welfare officer is, for example? If you went to speak to somebody, are you being met with sort of a vague or unapproachable behaviour? And how have you received this information today? You know, is it the club that you use? Has it been promoted through them? You know, so what's that communication been like? Okay, so we're going to just move on to positive sporting environment. So hopefully we've all got some great examples of this, because I do like to think that most of our places that we go to are a positive experience for all. So any thoughts on what you would look like in a positive sporting environment? So again, just popping some ideas in the chat would be great.
So Lauren's coming again with communication around safeguarding info, which is really important, obviously.
Brilliant stuff. So I'm going to just bring up some pre-suggested ideas, and I'm sure everyone else would have thought of something similar as well. So I can see Helena's just put that about smiles. Yeah, Lauren, love that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a lot, does it? Just a smile and friendly approach. That'd be perfect. So just some ideas that we'd already put down here about promoting good sportsmanship and respect. So using positive language, positive, welcome, open, friendly attitude, exactly like you said, Lauren, smiles, signage as well. So people, talking about respect and put in like your codes of conducts and that sort of thing, what's expected from people on signs so people can actually see that. Being open to feedback and dialogue. So feedback is welcome and acknowledged. So if you have got any constructive questions or concerns and it has been taken on board and you can see that there's been actions that have taken as a result of your suggestions, that's really great. Is the club involving their members to help shape their sessions? So there's some great examples where sports clubs are involving their youth and junior sections in order to bring their thoughts and feelings to help shape their sessions, and Nigel will touch on that in a little bit on some of his slides about how the FA are doing this. Equal opportunity. So are all players being given that equal playing time during their football practice or their football games? So on a kids five-a-side football match, for example, where you've got more than 5 children that regularly turn up, are they all being given an opportunity to play rather than the coach always fielding the same players? Fun and teamwork. So this is really, really important for our kids, that the players are having fun and they're also learning and being taught about trust and working together rather than success is only when you win. There is lots of different types of successes for us, whether it's just learning a new skill, keeping those expectations realistic as well. And then the regular communication, so that members are kept in the loop regarding results, future events. And this also links back to the feedback and the communications, as we mentioned. So how have you been communicated about this forum today? Was it through your local club? So they're actively promoting issue or information around welfare and how you can look at that. So we're going to just move on to a little film now. So this has been designed by the NSPCC, and it just helps again to reiterate some of the positive and negative environments that we've been talking about. So hopefully you can hear the sound and it will all play okay. If I press play, if someone can just give me a thumbs up that they can hear the sound.
Our children love taking part in sport, and as parents, it's great to see the enjoyment it brings. It can help keep them healthy, teach them new skills, and introduce them to new friends. But what can parents do to keep them safe? Do you feel confident you would know if something wasn't right in your child's sport? Do you feel like you could spot poor practice or abuse? Let's take a look at an example. This is Ellie. Ellie's had an amazing summer. She's played with her friends at the local park, and her cousin even taught her how to play the guitar. She's not had much time for training though. Summer's over now, and Ellie's more determined than ever to train hard and achieve her goal of competing for her county. Her coach is being quite hard on her though, and at snack time, they take Ellie's food away from her. Ellie goes home and tells her dad what happened with her coach, but he wasn't sure whether the coach was just trying to help Ellie. This type of behaviour might not automatically make you think it's abuse. Ellie's coach didn't shout at her or hit her. But this method of challenging Ellie in front of her peers and humiliating her about her appearance is harmful. This is just one example. You might see or hear other things that make you feel like something's not quite right. Even if your child doesn't tell you something's wrong, you might notice things like changes in behaviour, a lack of interest in a sport they once loved. They might become more private or guarded, or not want to talk. Small worries like these can be signs of abuse, such as emotional, physical, or sexual abuse or neglect. That's why it's so important that parents question the things they see and hear and ask questions if they're concerned. If you do feel worried about something, big or small, speak out. Everyone has a role to play in keeping children in sport safe. Every club should have a welfare officer who you can go to and raise your concerns. You should be told who this person is and how to contact them when you join. Every club should also have rules in place about how staff should behave and how they deal with concerns. These rules are often called codes of conduct or safeguarding policies, and they should apply to everyone. You should be able to see these rules at any time. But if you're not sure, you can always speak to the NSPCC helpline. They're here to reassure you and advise you about what you should do next. The NSPCC helpline is a free service and you don't have to say who you are. Sport and physical activity should be safe for all children to enjoy, and everybody is part of that. Together, we can keep children safe in sport.
Okay, great. So that played successfully. So that's a big tick in my book. We always have a little panic on Teams when you're doing presentations and it involves a video clip. Okay, so we're going to look at some questions now that, and I've put here should I ask, because I feel that you should be able to ask these as opposed to can I ask these. And the first couple of questions are ones that I think are probably the ones that are most important. So if you go into a sports activity, club environment, we should be able to ask who their welfare officer is or person in charge of welfare during that session. If the club is affiliated, so part of a national governing body, so the national governing body essentially is the hierarchy sitting above that sport or activity, such as the Football Association for football, gymnastics, British Gymnastics for gymnastics, English Cricket Board for cricket, and so on. There will be a minimum standards that that club has to follow in order to be able to affiliate with that national governing body. So you would normally be able to find out this information by looking up that sport online and using a club finder to see if the club that you're accessing are affiliated or registered with the national governing body. Some activity providers might not recognise the term welfare officer though, so you would want to ask who is the person who's responsible for safeguarding within that environment. This is the person that should have all the answers you need, and I would suggest if they don't, then that again is a red flag to you as to, has this person got the relevant skills and information to look after my child? So again, depending on the size of the club and whether they are part of an affiliated national governing body, their safeguarding policy may also be slightly different. If they are a larger club or a larger organisation, their policy may be a lot more comprehensive. But the fact that they've got a policy in place is important. So it shows that they have the welfare of your child, that they're in charge of at the forefront of what they do. Qualifications of staff and coaches, it kind of goes without saying, I think, doesn't it really? But this is also really important. So making sure that the coaches are qualified to undertake the activity that they're offering. As previously mentioned, sport is quite unregulated, and therefore this can mean that there's potentially quite a lot of shall we say, disparities or variations in qualifications that people have. Some guidance might be that that person had to do the coaching qualification way back when, but then there's been no minimum requirements for them to undertake a refresh or any extra learning. So they haven't been informed about changes in policies or coaching techniques. So this obviously doesn't lend itself very well to offering a positive environment for all the good things that we spoke about earlier. There is something called a code of conduct. So this is also something else that's quite important. And this is usually one of the things that most sports require a club or activity provider to have. It essentially just lays out how someone is expected to behave in that particular setting. So if you do need to pull someone up on their behaviour, you can always refer to that code of conduct because it's written down, it's in black and white. It lays out that expectation, and you can have one for children and adults separately, for parents, volunteers, staff. So depending on what involvement that person is within that sporting environment. Safer recruitment processes. So again, we can ask how the relevant coaches have been recruited. This just also helps to ensure that the people or the volunteers or the coaches are suitable to be helping out, and making sure that they've got the right qualifications, up-to-date DBS checks. In some cases, clubs might even ask for a reference from a previous club, and this kind of just helps to prevent people that have been coaching incorrectly, shall we say, or have been asked to leave certain clubs, and then they might move round counties or other clubs across different sports, that they're not able to do that because, yeah, if you spoke to the previous club as to why they left and they said, oh, well, it was because they were reported for X, Y, and Z, then you obviously wouldn't be going and asking them to coach at your club. And then also the promotion of welfare of children and young people. So does your club actively promote welfare within the club? Do they send out regular newsletters, and do they talk about the position of the club welfare officer? So knowing who that person is, that face against the name, and do they talk about certain awareness weeks as well? So there's always quite a lot of information out there around highlighting certain things. So we've got Stress Awareness Week, Mental Health Awareness Week, Adult Safeguarding, Child Safeguarding, that sort of thing. So these are really great pieces for clubs to be able to use to kind of talk around if they want to actively promote that in that session. It's a great sign that the club takes this information seriously, that they're actively talking about it. And also having your juniors involved in the creation of ideas. And with that passes me nicely on to a bit around Nigel's going to talk about what the FA are currently doing with some of their current initiatives.
Help if I turn my microphone on, that would be a good start. Backing up on everything that Heidi said, really positive stuff. Codes of conduct, I would definitely say, are an important piece of work. For us, we've sort of moved on a stage and we're looking at the voice of the child. So what we mean by that is, for us, I live in a place called Carterton. Our local youth football club is called Carterton Youth Football Club, and the clue's in the title. It's their club. It's not an adult club with youth players. It's a youth club with adult administrators. So we think it's really important that they have a say in the way that their club is run. And that could be all sorts of things, as simple as at the end of a training session, how did the training session go? What did we like? What didn't we like? Now, obviously, we can't take every suggestion on, but the fact that we're having that dialogue and we're giving them feedback, and if we can't, if the answer is no, that we can say, well, this is the reason why, I think is really important. We had a situation with one of our local clubs where they sat the girls down after a training session and said, what don't you like? And they said the lights in the toilets don't work. Well, that was a simple fix. Somebody went and got a couple of light bulbs, and that made them happy, and they felt they'd been listened to. And the whole point of it really is that we want them to be involved because they're the next generation of administrators, of welfare officers, of secretaries, of treasurers. But equally, if we're listening to what they're saying to us with the more, for want of a better phrase, more mundane stuff, then if they've got a safeguarding concern, they might feel more able to share that, having been listened to. If the answer is always no, then why would they share anything with you? So we think that's really important. We've got various ways, and some of them are not going to be light bulb moments for many of you. They might be things that you're already doing, but we run things like we have a suggestions box in the changing rooms, or we have at the end of a session, like I say, we just sit down with them for 5 minutes and talk about how the session was. We sometimes try and encourage some of the older groups to come and talk to the younger groups, because again, there's that age barrier sometimes for talking to mature adults compared to talking to people they might know because it's their friends or their brothers and sisters, or they're the same school or whatever. So again, they're more likely to share. We have youth committees as well, where we get, say, one from each age group to come along and just once every couple of months and just chat about what's going well with the club, things like that. And again, we look at those sessions, what do we do for the end of season party type thing, because normally that's set up by the adults and this is what we're going to do. Why don't we ask the kids what colour kit they want and things like that? So we think it's really important that we engage with them because it's their club. And then, like I say, hopefully, if they have a safeguarding concern because they feel they're being listened to, they'll share that concern, and then hopefully we can support them in their time of need. Equally, we want them to feel part of the club because they're the future of the club, and that's where we move into the next gen stuff. And we're looking at the next generation of club welfare officers, secretaries, treasurers. And in Professor Whitty style, Heidi, if you could move on, please, to the next slide, that would be great. Yeah, and so we have these 3 levels, and I know the writing's probably not that big on there, but hopefully you can get the general gist of it, where we encourage them to go to another stage. So we're offering them an actual formal way of becoming involved in the administration of their club, and we really emphasize it's their club. They can sit alongside secretaries, they can sit along treasurers, hear how they go on, maybe as part of their Duke of Edinburgh awards. This is a really equal sort of process that fits in nicely with the various Duke of Edinburgh awards, and sort of has taken a bit of shape from that in the bronze, silver and gold level that we've got. So we encourage them to get involved, show them what's involved, and it's really, so far, it's early days for us running this in Oxfordshire, but we've had a really positive response from the young people, who just see this a bit more than just volunteering. They do see it as something that will help them in the future. And for some of the older ones who are coming to the end perhaps of their school years, this is good CV stuff as well, because it shows that they're willing to get involved in other things other than just football. So I think there's a lot that you could do. Some of it won't be suitable for all sports, some of it won't be suitable for all clubs, depending on the size of your club. But I think it's really important overall that we do engage with our young people, because they're the reason we're doing this. And so we need to know that we're doing what they want and not what we want. If anybody's got any questions about what we're doing and how we do it, more than happy. You can unmute. I'm going to go a bit rogue, Heidi, and say that if they want to unmute and share a thought, then more than happy to take any questions.
Yeah, please do. If anyone's got any questions, now's a good chance to pause and ask those.
No news is good news, as they say.
Okay, great stuff. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Nigel. It's really nice to show what at least the Oxfordshire FA are doing as well. and I've come across some other sporting areas as well that, you know, they are certainly looking at that youth voice. It's really something that's kind of taking shape at the moment, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of it across different sports sectors as well as the time goes on. So we're going to just continue with the presentation in terms of how we can look to raise a concern. So we've already covered off questions that we should be able to ask, what we think, you know, good and poor practice looks like. So now if we feel that something isn't right and we want to speak to someone, then knowing how to and who to report it to is also so important. So I've just created this flowchart here because I felt that it was a really good way to understand the best ways to do your reporting. So if you've come across a situation where it clearly is that if this practice carries on, then somebody is going to be seriously injured, then reporting that to the police obviously is your first port of call. So that's your 999 calls. If you've got a concern about the club that your child is attending, then the club welfare officer is the person who'll be trained how to deal with that concern. And that would be the person that you would need to speak to. And hopefully we've already asked the question as to who is the club welfare officer, so we know who it is that we're reporting that to. But if however, you feel that the concern hasn't been dealt with in the way that you want it to, or you have reported it and the practices that you've witnessed and all the equipment, etc., hasn't been changed and things still have stayed the same, then you can then report your concern directly to your national governing body. So as I've already mentioned, the Football Association, for example, in football, they will have their own, most national governing bodies have their own safeguarding team at the headquarters, wherever that may be, but their information and their guidance will always be on their website, so you can look that up to see who it is you need to speak to, and there might be a form on there you can report to. Even if your club isn't linked to a national governing body though, because not all clubs and sports have to, it could be for various reasons why they would be, but that it's worth still speaking to that organisation because they still might be able to give you some guidance around what it is that you can do to help. Outside of your club and the national governing body, there are quite a lot of local services that can help support and offer advice. So we've got down here, the next one down is your LADO, who's your local authority designated officer. So they're responsible for managing allegations against adults who work with children, and they would also be linked to your local authority. So for example, our LADO is a lady called Jo, and she sits within the Oxfordshire Child Safeguarding Board, which is at Oxford County Council. A lot of their cases that they get reported tend to come from education, but I think this, and they would say that a lot of this has been down to the lack of awareness that people have around reporting and this service in the sporting space. And there are also national organisations that you can speak to for advice, such as the NSPCC or the CPSU, which is the Child Protection and Sport Unit, which is the sporting arm of the NSPCC. And then there is also Active Oxfordshire. So that's obviously who I work for. And as your sport welfare officer, if you have got any questions and you just want any advice, then please feel free to contact me directly. I would always then link back to the national governing bodies. So as Nigel's here is a wealth of knowledge and is the expert in that sport. So, you know, we can all work together. But yeah, they have got your contact details there if you want to speak to anybody. So there are some extra measures as well that you can do in order to help support your club or your activity provider. So this is just a bit of sort of really practical information, and I'm sure probably most of you already do this, but just ways that you can also do that extra bit to help. So keeping your information up to date. So clubs should have important information about your child, whether it's medical, emotional, or their physical needs. And if there are any changes going on at home or in your family network, it is always worth mentioning this. So if you've had maybe if you've had a separation or a bereavement, then this could cause a change in your child's emotional behaviour. And if the club's aware of this, then they could offer that extra support for them. It's also really important to try and keep to times for pickup and collections. I don't think drop-offs is necessarily a problem because we're, you know, if we've got a time where we can drop the kids, then we're usually there on the door waiting for the doors to open. But when it comes to pickups, just be aware that this can cause a safety concern. So if you've got a single child left alone with an adult, for example, this could become a safeguarding risk. So it's always worthwhile to have a safety plan in place. If your child's of an age where you could have a phone or a key or agreed procedure for them if you are running late, for example, it's something a really good thing to consider. And then if there is an opportunity to get involved with your club, being an active part of your club offers you that insight and the opportunity to bring new ideas and learn about their practices. And then if there's stuff that you don't quite like and things aren't changing, then getting involved and creating that change yourself. But I appreciate we all are busy and we all can't be involved in every single activity that our children do. But yeah, it's just something worth mentioning there. Okay, we're going to just move on to last couple of slides we've got here is touchline behaviour and what it means to become an active bystander. So what do we mean about touchline behaviour? This might be a new term that you've not heard of before. So essentially this is how we behave when we're watching our children take part in sports. So I've just put a little screenshot there of a sign that I actually spotted when I went to my child's, who was 6 at the time, first under-7 football match, probably about a year ago now, and it did make me chuckle actually, just purely because of what it lays out, and at the end there it says this is not the World Cup, and I think it's really worthwhile remembering that, because even at under-7s football we can still become quite engaged and invested in the football match that's taking place. So it's great to be passionate about sport, but keeping our emotions in check is really important. As a lot of people that help out in sports are volunteers, so the referees, the officials, they're mostly likely to have given up their time to be there. So if you feel that they've not done something that you agree with, try and report it in the right manner. That sort of touchline behaviour, shouting, insults, you're watching there, you're watching your child playing their sport. So being that role model and showing respect as an adult is so important. In a recent survey, actually, by the Youth Sport Trust, it did show that one of the main things that children enjoy about taking part in sport is that it's fun, and the competitive side, I think, so those that said that they enjoyed sport because the competitive side actually scored the lowest. So it's just well worth remembering that the kids just want to have fun, as they say, and I think we all just need to remember this. So what do I mean about an active bystander? So I'm just going to read this analogy here that's on the page there. Someone saw something that they thought was not right, but thought someone else would say something, so didn't say anything. Because someone assumed that someone else would say something, in the end, no one said anything, and then nothing was done about it. Therefore, nothing changed and things stayed the same. So what we mean about being an active bystander is about if you see something inappropriate that you don't feel it's right, whether it's discriminatory language, shouting, swearing, certain coaching techniques, the spaces that your children are being taught in, and if it's safe to do so, report it to that appropriate person. So that flow chart that we just showed on the previous slide gives you a lot of information about how you can go reporting things. It's always worth mentioning it because, as the analogy reads, everybody just assumes somebody else will do it, and then sometimes things don't get done. I have got one more film just to show you. So this is another film that's been designed by the NSPCC, and then this does touch back on the touchline behaviour and sort of active bystander from the perspective of a child. So fingers crossed we get 2 out of 2 and both videos work. If I can just get a thumbs up from Nigel when I press play, that'd be great.
Who do you think they said was their biggest fan?
That was me.
Well, what I like most about dance is obviously dancing. I just feel like nobody's judging, nobody cares, and I just feel free from everything and I'm in my own little world.
Probably the competitions, because they're really good fun.
Like winning medals or even coming last is still fun because you went out to the competition and you tried your best.
What's the best thing about having your parents support you?
Makes me feel really happy and warm inside. Like I could do anything and really confident.
If I have a really good or really bad piece, I'll look over in the crowd and I'll just see her smiling no matter what.
It feels important to teach children that actually being present is the important thing. Taking part is the important thing. If you lose, it's just something to improve on, and that's okay.
If a child or person hears their kind of name getting called out in a good way, it helps them do a little better. They know they've got someone there to perform for. But then obviously when you've got the bad ones, it kind of has the opposite effect.
When they're saying something horrible about me, it just makes me feel sad.
When parents sort of say things that could be quite negative, it can really feel like quite a toxic thing to pass on to their children as well.
And it can be devastating, and you could lose a potential Olympic champion.
It's not good spirit, and it's this negative energy that I don't like to be around.
You get hugs or anything if it's been a rough one?
You usually get a hug, don't you? Yeah. Sometimes we get a little treat. But it's great to really sort of talk to her about the game afterwards in the car, and really encouraging sort of thinking about those good bits. So even if they do lose, like what was the good bit about it? What did they do really well? You know, where have they played together really well, and how they made each other feel as well.
Do you think you'd be able to spot a negative or abusive coach?
Yeah, I think so. I would see the signs with him not wanting to go to classes, not wanting to leave his room potentially, and his whole positive vibe on dance classes changing.
Who do you think Sean said is his biggest fan?
Me. I think Sean said that I was his biggest fan.
Sean, what'd you say?
Mum. I said mum.
Exactly that.
Isabel's biggest fan is her little sister. There are rules in the arena that you are not meant to shout and cheer, but you can't tell a very cute 5-year-old off for that.
Was it me? Oh,
How do you know Mom's your biggest fan?
Because she does all the hard work for me every single day.
She's always there. She's just always there supporting me. Always smiling and like being loud and cheering after a good throw.
Yeah, I do shout at Africa's Pro, sorry.
Knowing that there's someone there to push you further and encourage you to carry on doing what you're doing.
I want to thank you, Mum, for working very hard for me, for my sister and for my dad.
Thanks for always being supportive and there for me.
I just love everything about sport. I think it helps kids in all walks of life.
I can tell he loves it. It brings us together. It's something we can all talk about, something we can all get involved in. It just makes me smile.
Great, 2 out of 2. I do love that clip though from the NSPCC. The kid with the break dancing as well. He just, yeah, melts my heart every time I watch that. But essentially it does mean, you know, the children just want us to be present and to have fun. That's kind of what it's all about, really. Okay, so thank you so much for your time today. We're just going to cover over some helpful resources and some signposting, and maybe some questions if anybody has any to finish. So just some helpful resources here. This is a link to an organisation, I suppose is the way to describe it, called Play Their Way. So Play Their Way is a movement which has been designed to give coaches, and to allow children to have a voice or a choice rather within their activity. So it ensures that activities are designed with what the children want to do, striking that balance between achievement but not taking away from that enjoyment. So it kind of goes back to all that stuff that we've been talking about, you know, having the children involved, their voice, the positive environments, what it is that children actually like to do when it comes to sport. And they've got their ambition there, which is about all children and young people, regardless of age, background or ability, to be able to decide their journey when participating in sport. So it's a really good organisation, really worthwhile checking out, and they've got a whole bunch of different resources on their website if you have some spare time to go and have a look at that. And then here are just some links through to some of the organisations that we've already spoken about during the workshop today. So we've got the top one, which is the Oxfordshire Child Safeguarding Board. So this has got details of how to contact the LADO, and there's just a whole bunch of information about the work that they do within our county as well. UK Coaching, so this is a accredited training organisation. So usually you may be signposted here if you are looking to do some club welfare activities, but they also have a duty to care accreditation, which is for coaches, and it's designed around 6 standards, which include diversity, inclusion, mental health and mental well-being, physical well-being, safeguarding and safe to practice. And once that person's achieved that accreditation, they also get a digital badge, which means that if you've booked your child onto a certain coaching course or a club, sorry, and they're demonstrating that they've received this accreditation, they've just gone that extra mile to do this extra bit of learning. We've also got the CPSU, which is a Child Protection in Sport unit, which is the primary reason why we've designed this presentation today. But again, there's lots of resources on there, including free training courses, short videos and questionnaires. And then the Oxfordshire FA, so this links back to some of the information that Nigel was been speaking about. It's got his contact details and signposting for courses and resources. And they do also offer a free course for parents and carers regarding safeguarding. High speed training is just the last one. So this is a really good free online course, and it's aimed at parents and carers, and it's been designed by those with lived experience. So from those who have been affected by abuse in sport. It is quite emotionally challenging than some of the other resources, but it is certainly really worth looking at if you have some free time to do that. And then, yeah, that just brings me to the end of the presentation. So just leaves all that's left for me to say is thank you so much